the palace banquet, my fiancé Zhong, the hereditary heir of Xinyuan Marquis, publicly called off the engagement, accusing me of having an improper relationship with someone and claiming I was no longer fit to be the heir's consort. My younger half-sister, at just the right moment, produced a man's jade pendant as evidence. Amidst the uproar in the hall, I lowered my head, gently touched my lower abdomen and smiled. The Jianu Marquis, seated in the place of honor before the emperor, suddenly crushed his wine glass, staring at my half-sister. His voice was ice-cold. "That jade in your hand, it's mine one." The Jianu Marquis slowly walked to my half-sister Wu Qin and extended his hand, trembling. Wan Yuqin handed over the jade pendant. The Marquis took it, his gaze sweeping over Wan Yuqin and Zhong Duan. Then turning towards the imperial seat, he knelt on one knee and confessed his guilt. He stated publicly that 2 months prior at a flower viewing banquet, he and I were set up and drank something impure when he was not in his right mind. He offended me. He said this entire matter was his fault alone. He paused, his voice even deeper. "Miss Ron is innocent and pure. It is your servant who has failed the Ron family and failed your Majesty's trust." The banquet erupted in chaos. The emperor's expression shifted from shock to gravity. The Jianu Marquis held military power. If this matter was not handled properly, I stood rooted to the spot, my fingertips still resting on my lower abdomen. At that flower viewing banquet I had been drugged. Wu Qin had lured me to a side courtyard. I just never expected that behind that door would be Zhongzhu, the Xinyuan Marquis. His eyes were clouded then, veins bulging on his forehead. He had clearly also been poisoned. "Get out," he said through gritted teeth, his hands gripping the doorframe tightly. I didn't leave in the flickering candle light. I remembered when I was 14, surrounded by hooligans at a temple outside the city. He had ridden up on his horse and swept away those filthy hands with one sword stroke. That night I kissed him first, the effects of the drug mixed with our suppressed feelings, spiraling beyond control. When we woke at dawn, he looked at the evidence of my lost virginity on the sheets and the bruises on my shoulders, then punched the wall until his fist bled. "I will take responsibility," he said. I shook my head and said it wasn't necessary. I knew how difficult this was. He was the Jianu Marquis, and I was his son's fiancé Atilda copyright. If this got out, it would be a scandal that would shake the court. But I hadn't expected Zhong Duan and Wan Yuqin to go this far. They didn't know that man from that night was Zhongsu. They only thought their plan had succeeded and couldn't wait to ruin me publicly at the palace banquet. Even less did I expect Ruined.It to steal that jade pendant. Zhongzhu had dropped it. I had hidden it well, but she still found it. Preposterous. The old madam of the Xinyuan Marquis Manus. Rebuke pulled my thoughts back. The old madam stood up with her cane, trembling with rage. "Zhu, what nonsense are you spouting? She must have seduced." Mother Zhongsu interrupted her. "It was your son's fault." He kowtowed again to state his case. He was willing to marry me as a wife of equal standing to salvage my reputation. The emperor was silent for a long time before finally speaking. "Marquis Yuan, do you realize how much criticism this will attract?" Zhongsu nodded solemnly. The emperor looked at me and asked if I was willing. I touched my lower abdomen where a growing life existed, his and mine. I looked up and met Zhongsu's gaze. "I am willing." 2-3 days later, the imperial edict granting the marriage arrived at the war residence. Simultaneously, a decree stripping Zhong Duan of his position as hereditary heir was delivered to the Zhong manor. The wedding was set for 1 month later. On the night before my departure, my mother came to my room, her eyes red. "Yu Yi, that manor, the principal, Madame Wang Shu, is not a kind person. The old madam has never liked the Marquis. Now that Zhong Duan is deposed, the second branch is watching eagerly. With you going there, I'm afraid." I held my mother's hand and said I knew what kind of situation the manor was in now, but I was willing. My mother sighed softly and said no more. On the wedding day, the manor was filled with guests. During the bowing ceremony, I could feel Wang Sha's sharp gaze from the side. After the ceremony, I was escorted to the bridal chamber. Late at night, Zhongsu finally pushed the door open. He had drunk a fair amount, but his eyes were clear. He reached out wanting to touch my face but stopped midair. "I've put you through hardship," he said, his voice. I shook my head, took his hand and pressed it to my lower abdomen. He was very good today, no trouble. Zhongsu's hand trembled slightly. In the candle light, this man, decisive and resolute on the battlefield, actually had a glimmer of tears in his eyes. "I will protect you both. No matter what happens," I believed him. The next day, during the tea offering ceremony, Wang Sha did not accept the teacup I presented. She looked calmly at Zhongsu. Now that the Marquis has taken an equal wife, the management of the household finances should also be shared from now on. Jong-soo was about to speak, but I pressed his hand, looked up and smiled. The principal madam is right. However, I have just entered the manor and am not familiar with many things yet. How about? I first learned from the principal madam for a while. Wanga squinted. Just then a report came from outside the gate. Someone had arrived from the palace. A eunuch walked in holding an imperial edict and read it aloud. The northern border was unstable. The Marquisian Yuan was ordered to lead the troops out in 3 days to pacify the border troubles. The entire hall fell silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. My hand holding the teacup trembled, but I maintained a proper smile. 3. Jong-soo bowed and accepted the edict. After the eunuch left, Wang Sha took my hand. She said that during the months the Marquis was away from the capital, it would be a perfect time for her to teach me household management. The old madam skimmed the foam off her tea with the lid, not even lifting her eyelids. Zhu, with you leaving, Donna's matter should also be settled. He is still your eldest son. Since Jong-Duan was deposed as heir, he had stayed shut in his room all day. Jong-soo put down his teacup and announced to everyone that for this campaign he intended to take Jong-Duan with him. The old madam's hand paused. The teacup lid clinked against the rim with a clear sound. You want to take him to the northern border to die to earn military merit, Jong-Ziu corrected. The sons of the Jong family shouldn't be trapped in the inner courtyard. These words were harsh. The old madam's face darkened. Wang Sha also dropped her smile. Jong-soo looked at me, his gaze softening. Yui has just become pregnant and shouldn't exert herself. Mannered. Affairs can continue as usual for now. If anything uncertain arises, you can send someone to the military camp to ask me, the Marquis jokes. Wanga said flatly. Military affairs are demanding, they shouldn't be disturbed with trivial household matters. Sister Ru is pregnant and needs more rest. I've managed the household for so many years, I'm hardly going to make mistakes. Between the lines, she was trying to exclude me from power. I met her gaze. The principal madam is right. I am young and indeed need to learn more. How about this? You continue handling daily trivialities and I'll just look over the account books, familiarizing myself with the man's expenses. This way I won't overexert myself, but I won't be completely ignorant of affairs either. Wang Sha's eyes narrowed slightly. Looking at account books meant touching the lifeline of finances and supplies. The request was tactfully made but hard to refuse. Jong-soo nodded in agreement. The decision was made. The old man snorted coldly, stood up and left. Wang Sha also excused herself. Only Jong-soo and I remained in the main hall. He walked over and crouched down. I leave in 3 days. In this manner you must be careful, I know. I reached out to smooth the wrinkles on his shoulder. The northern border is dangerous, you need to be even more careful. He held my hand. I'll come back as soon as possible before the child is born. I smiled and nodded. For the next morning, Wang Sha's personal attendant, Mama Li, came to invite me to the main courtyard. I took my maid Ching-Su and went as instructed. Wang Sha was looking at account books. Seeing me arrive, she gestured for me to sit. Then she pushed a ledger over, saying that with the Marquis away on campaign, the manor's expenses needed to be reduced. I opened the ledger. My monthly allowance was halved. Coal rations and cloth allocations were all cut by 30%. Even the allowance for miscarriage prevention herbs was vaguely written. Behind me, Ching-Su gasped softly. I closed the ledger and, as if mentioning it casually, said the Marquis had specifically instructed that if there were any needs I could send word to him in the military camp. Wang Sha looked up at me. Little sister, are you using the Marquis to pressure me? I wouldn't dare. My attitude was differential. If the principal madam finds it improper, why not wait until the Marquis returns to discuss it further? The air was stagnant for a moment. Wang Sha suddenly smiled, took my hand, and explained that she had only been focused on the man's expenses and forgot about my delicate condition. The allowances would remain as before. Then she told me to come to the main courtyard every day at the Chenao to study the accounts. I nodded in agreement. The Chenao was exactly when my morning sickness was worst. Leaving the main courtyard, Ching-Su complained softly. Miss, the principal madam is clearly being difficult. You managed the household accounts at the sacrificial wine minister's residence for 3 years. Looking at accounts doesn't need to be scheduled for a specific time, I said calmly. This is just the beginning. Over the next few days I went to the main courtyard every day at the Chen hour. Wang Sha taught me to read accounts but actually made me sit idly for 2 hours. The account books were disorganized and not the core ledgers, and when she explained she spoke very rapidly. I just listened quietly occasionally. When morning sickness made me uncomfortable, I would drink some warm water to suppress it. On the evening of the third day, Jong-soo returned to the manor to prepare his gear. Seeing my pale face, he frowned, not feeling well. I smiled slightly, just a little tired. What time does the Marquis depart tomorrow? The Marrow Hour. He looked at me. Is Wanga making things difficult for you? I shook my head. The principal madam treats me well. He was silent for a moment, then took a token from his bosom and placed it on the table. He told me this was his personal command, token within the manor or the military. Seeing it was like seeing him, the guard captain. Zyro Chen was his trusted man, reliable. I nodded and put the token away. That night he stayed in my room, not for passion, just holding me. In the darkness his arm encircled my waist, carefully avoiding my belly. Yui, he suddenly whispered, that night in the side courtyard. Do you regret it? I kissed his lips. No regrets. His arm tightened, pulling me into his embrace. 5. The next day at the Marrow Hour. I saw him off at the Mana gate. Jong-Duan was already waiting there, his face dark. Before mounting his horse, Jong-soo instructed Zyro Chen in front of everyone. Take good care of the manor, especially Madame Wuan. Zyro Chen cupped his hands and accepted the order. The sound of hooves faded and the Mana gate closed. Wang Sha stood beside me, saying softly, little sister must take good care of her health from now on. I turned to look at her, smiling gently. The principal madam is thoughtful. Though the Marquis has left the manor, the people inside and out will naturally take good care of me. Her expression stiffened slightly. Back in my courtyard, I summoned Zyro Chen. I instructed him on 3 matters. Investigate clearly at the flower viewing banquet 2 months ago. Why was the Marquis also drugged in the side courtyard? Monitor the activity around Jong-Duan's courtyard. And third, investigate Mama Li beside the old madam, who she had frequent contact with in the past 6 months. A flicker of surprise passed through Zyro Chen's eyes, then he lowered his head and accepted the orders. After Zyro Chen withdrew, Ching Su asked worriedly, Miss, you just entered the manor and are already investigating these things. Isn't it too rushed? I touched my lower abdomen and looked out the window. Rushed. In the afternoon, Imperial Physician Chen came to take my pulse for peace. It was specially arranged by Jong-soo after feeling my pulse. Imperial Physician Chen frowned slightly and asked if I had been restless lately. There are many matters in the residence, so I am unavoidably tired. Imperial Physician Chen pondered for a moment. This old one will prescribe some medicine. However, he lowered his voice. Has Madam come into contact with anything like musk lately? My heart tightened. Imperial Physician Chen continued, saying, my pulse showed faint signs of miscarriage. I looked toward the incense burner in the room. It had been sent by Lady Wang yesterday, said to be calming incense. Imperial Physician Chen gave a few more instructions before leaving. Very well, someone had already made a move. In the evening, Zyro Chen returned to report. He said on the day of the flower viewing banquet, the Marquis had received a secret letter and gone to the side courtyard. As for the medicine, the Marquis had only drunk wine from his own table that day. As for Nanny Li, she had secretly contacted the second household many times in the past 6 months. Last month, she had also gone to the one residence. The one residence, my good younger half-sister. I nodded and stood up, instructing him to check everyone who handled my food and daily items from now on. Zyro Chen bowed in agreement. That night I had a dream. In the dream, Jong-soo stood in the northern border's wind and snow, covered in blood with cold arrows shooting toward him from behind. I woke up drenched in cold sweat. The next morning, Lady Wang sent someone to summon me, saying, the old mistress wished to see me. I tidied my robes slightly and left, 6 stepping into the show-in hall. The old mistress was leaning on a soft couch. Lady Wang sat below, twisting prayer beads in her hand. I lowered my eyes and bowed. The old mistress did not bid me rise for a long time. When my knees began to ache faintly, she finally spoke, questioning if I had used the Marquis' private order to investigate people in the residence. I stood straight and replied calmly that I had noticed some unrest in the residence lately, so I had Zyro Chen keep a closer eye. The old mistress sneered, I see the most unrest in this residence began the day you entered. Nanny Li offered a teacup. The old mistress took a sip. Jong-Duan was punished. The Marquis went to war. And now even the old servants by my side are to be investigated. Wow, you have quite the authority. I met her gaze directly, stating that the Marquis had given me the token because he trusted me. If anyone was dissatisfied because of this, they were the ones who truly deserved investigation. Lady Wang's prayer beads paused in her hand. She spoke, her tone gentle. Younger sister is young and spirited and acts for the Marquis resident's sake. However, the people by the old mistress's side have served for decades. Investigating them like this will only chill their hearts. I smiled and revealed everything about the calming incense in my courtyard being tampered with. The old mistress's face changed, her eyes sharp as she looked at Lady Wang. Lady Wang squeezed her prayer beads tight, yet remained calm on the surface. That incense was taken from the storehouse by me. Many people use it, how could there be a problem? Younger sister must be overthinking. I calmly stated that Imperial physician Chen had verified it contained a small amount of musk, not enough to cause immediate harm, but daily exposure would lead to miscarriage. The room fell silent. Lady Wang set down her prayer beads inside. It was my negligence. The storehouse steward was incompetent. I will investigate thoroughly. I will give you an explanation for this matter. The corner of my mouth lifted. Zyro Chen has already gone to arrest them. Steward Zhong of the storehouse and the maid who delivered the incense should be kneeling in the front hall by now. Lady Wang's smile froze on her lips. The old mistress sat up abruptly. How dare you arrest people without permission? The Marquis's token is here. If the old mistress wishes to attend the interrogation, you may move to the front hall. The old mistress's chest heaved as she stared daggers at me. I met her gaze. Without flinching, after a long while she scoffed. Excellent, I shall see what you can find out. 7. In the front hall, Steward Zhong and Chua knelt on the ground, trembling. Zhao Chen stood with his men on either side. I spoke, asking where the incense had come from. Steward Zhong car Madame Ruin. The incense is a regular stock in the storehouse. This lowly one only distributed it according to protocol. Regular stock incense contains musk. I lifted the teacup. All storehouse entries and exits have records. Who touched this batch of calming incense this month will be known with one check. Chu has suddenly cried out, saying Nanny Li had taken some musk last month to make sachets. Nanny Li's face turned pale. You lie. I immediately ordered Zyro Chen to take men to search Nanny Li's quarters. Nanny Li collapsed to the ground. Lady Wang stood up abruptly. Wu Yuye, Nanny Li is the old mistress's person. How dare you? Precisely because she is by the old mistress's side. We cannot leave. Hidden dangers, I interrupted her, looking at the old mistress. After all, he is the Marquis's eldest son. Now that the Marquis' whereabouts are unknown, the residents must have a backbone. I lifted the teacup, clarifying that Zhongsu was only missing, not killed in battle. Acting hastily now would chill the hearts of the frontline soldiers. The old mistress sneered. Then, according to you, who should lead the residents now? I calmly took out the token before leaving the residence. The Marquis entrusted the token to this wife. Naturally, we shall follow the Marquis's orders. Zhong Zuan of the second household suddenly spoke, his tone sarcastic. A woman and with child. How can she preside over the overall situation? Besides, if the Marquis truly meets his end, whether the child in your womb is male or female is still unknown. I lifted my eyes to look at him. You mean the Marquis will definitely not return? Zhong Xuan's face changed and he fell silent. His Majesty has sent reinforcements north to search. We shall find him alive or recover his body. I stood up slowly. Before the court reaches a conclusion, anyone who speaks such inauspicious words shall be guilty of cursing the commander and undermining military morale. Who among you can bear this charge? No one in the hall spoke. I looked at the old mistress with the Marquis absent. The residents should unite even more to stabilize the rear, not rush to fight for power and position, making a laughing stock of ourselves. The old mistress's face turned ashen, yet she was speechless for a moment. Lady Wang suddenly wiped her tears, saying she had only been overly concerned and everything would follow the Marquis' arrangements before his departure. Returning to my courtyard, Zyro Chen was already waiting. According to his report, the night Zhong Su fell into an ambush, only a few generals knew the original marching route. Yet the enemy seemed fully prepared. There was a traitor. I pondered for a moment. How many days until Zhong Juan arrives in the capital? At most 3 days. Keep a close eye on everyone entering and exiting Zhongda's courtyard. Zyro Chen accepted the order and withdrew. Qing Su said worriedly, Miss, if the eldest young master truly returns and with military merit, I fear he will not be peaceful. I looked out the window. Young Juan had never had good intentions. Having been stripped of his heir title, he would only become more ruthless. I recalled the flower viewing banquet. Drugging Zhong Su at the palace banquet was no simple matter. Now that Zhong Su was missing, it was the perfect opportunity for those people to turn the tables. 9. The next day, rewards arrived from the palace, commending Zhong Juan for his calmness in crisis and leading his troops to break through the siege. Along with the rewards came an oral decree. The emperor, sympathizing with the Zenu and Marquis residents, specially granted Zhongdu and permission to assist in managing residents' affairs upon his return. Lady Wang's eyes were filled with pride as she received the decree. In the afternoon, I went to Zhong Su's study. In the military books he often read, I found several pages of letters written before his expedition. His handwriting was sharp. If anything befalls me, entrust all matters of the residents to Yu Ye. If our child is born, name him Hung, meaning fairness and righteousness. 3 days later, Yung Juan returned to the residence. A new scar ran across his face. Upon entering, he went straight to Sheen Hall, knelt before the old mistress and wept, saying he had failed to protect his father. The old mistress held him, crying out her beloved son. Lady Wang wiped her tears beside them. A scene of deep familial affection unfolded. I stood outside the hall for a moment, then turned and left. In the evening, Zhong Juan came to my courtyard. He stood in the yard, speaking to me through the curtain. He said he was deeply saddened by what had happened to Zhong Su. In the days ahead, he would need my guidance on residence affairs. His tone was respectful, flawless. I had Qing Zhu lift the curtain. The eldest young master has worked hard. The Marquis is a man of good fortune. He will surely return safely. During this time, the residents will rely on the heir's efforts. Zhong Juan looked up at me. Second mother is right. Father will surely return. After all, second mother is carrying his younger brother. I caressed my belly and smiled. Indeed, whether male or female, it is the Marquis's blood. Zhong Juan's eyes turned cold. He took his leave. That night, Xiao Chen reported, after returning to the residence, Zhong Juan had secretly met with people from the second household and a palace eunuch wearing the Eastern Palace waist token. Zhong Juan could not wait any longer. The next day, a censor in the court impeached Zhong Su for being reckless and arrogant, leading to the army's defeat, and dug up old charges, saying he lacked personal virtue and forcibly seized his son's wife. The subtext implied the child in my womb was of unknown origin and unworthy of inheriting the title. When the news reached the residence, Lady Wang was inviting me to breakfast. She ladled me a bowl of soup and sighed softly. These imperial senses are truly something, with the Marquis' fate unknown. They're already rushing to push him when he's down. Don't take it to heart, sister. A clear conscience needs no defense. I took the bowl but did not drink. You speak truly, madam, I said, setting it down. Yet I cannot help but wonder, why would the censor choose this moment to impeach him? Lady Wang's smile stiffened slightly. Just then, voice came from outside, announcing a visitor from the palace bearing an imperial edict. It was the emperor's oral order. I was to enter the palace at once for an audience. I rose slowly and straightened my sleeves. It had finally come. Qing X's face palled and she tried to follow. I shook my head gently and whispered for her to find Zhao Chen and prepare as I had earlier instructed. As I walked through the main gate, Lady Wang stood under the corridor. She looked at me, the corner of her mouth curling upward. 10. The palace paths were deep and quiet, with unmelting snow still covering the ground. The Chenking Palace was heated by floor dragons, and warmth washed over me as I entered. The emperor was reviewing memorials. Several ministers stood on either side, and Zhong Juan was among them. I cow out in proper ceremony. The emperor lifted his eyes to me. What, do you know why I have summoned you? This wife is ignorant, your majesty. The emperor picked up a memorial from his desk and tossed it before me. The memorial spread open, revealing the censor's impeachment, every word a blade. Jinnu and Marquis's whereabouts are unknown, and the court is filled with gossip. Some say the child in your womb is of impure blood, unfit to inherit the title. What have you to say? I bowed low and kowtowed, stating clearly that the Marquis knew full well of my innocence, and that this child's noble blood was beyond doubt empty words. An elderly minister spoke up. This concerns the inheritance. Marquis title. How can we trust only your side? Zhong Juan spoke at the right moment, his voice heavy with grief. He said that before Zhong Su's expedition he had spoken with him at length, and that the Marquis had asked him to support the family if disaster struck. As for the child in my womb, Zhong Su had never mentioned it to him. His words were artful. They showed loyalty while implying the child might not be Zhong Su. The emperor then asked what proof I had. I took the page of letter from Zhong Su's study from my sleeve and presented it with both hands. The emperor unfolded it and glanced over the writing. Afterward, a eunuch passed the letter among the ministers for them to examine. Zhong Juan's expression shifted slightly. The handwriting is indeed Jin Yu and Marquise's, the emperor said, setting down his teacup. But a single letter is still not enough to convince everyone. I bowed again and replied that before the Marquis left for war, he had asked Imperial Physician Chen of the Imperial Hospital to examine my pulse and prescribed medicine for the pregnancy. Physician Chen kept complete medical records, which proved the date of my conception matched exactly the time the Marquis had been in the residence. The Emperor fell silent for a moment, then summoned Imperial Physician Chen. Shortly after, Chen hurried into the hall. The Emperor asked about the details in his records. Chen replied respectfully that judging by my pulse, I had conceived about 2 months prior. At that time, the Marquis had been in capital. The dates match perfectly. Are you absolutely certain? The Emperor pressed. This minister guarantees it with his life, Chen said, kowtowing. The Imperial Hospital's records are thorough and without error. The Emperor nodded and dismissed Chen. His gaze turned to Zhong Duan. Zhong Duan, what do you have to say now? Zhong Duan knelt on the ground. If Imperial Physician Chen testifies to this minister has nothing to say, nothing to say. The Emperor's voice deepened. Yet I hear that since your return to the capital, you have been in frequent contact with the Eastern Palace. Zhong Duan's head shot up, his face turning ashen. Several ministers' expressions changed abruptly. The memorial impeaching Xin Yu and Marquis. You sent it to the censor's office, did you not? The Emperor picked up another memorial. Much of the content here is secret military information. Where did you obtain it? This minister knows nothing. The Emperor sneered. Shall I summon officials from the Eastern Palace to confront you? Zhong Duan lay prostrate on the ground, trembling all over. The Emperor turned to me and gestured for me to rise. He swept his gaze over the ministers in the hall. Jew and Marquis fights for his country. With his fate unknown, people in the court are already scheming for his title and property, even framing his wife. I am deeply disappointed. Several ministers quickly knelt down. After a long pause, the Emperor issued his decree until Marquis returned. All affairs of the Marquis residence would be managed by me. Zhong Duan, having returned to the capital, would be sent to the military camp on the outskirts of the city for training. He was forbidden from returning to the residence without explicit imperial permission. The matter of title inheritance would be discussed later. Zhong Duan collapsed to the ground. 11. By the time I walked out of the hall, the sun was already setting. Outside the palace gate, Zhao Chen waited beside the carriage. He let out a breath of relief when he saw me. He then reported that after I had entered the palace, the first madam had sent for the second miss of the Huan family to come to the residence. I paused in my steps. Huan Yuqin actually dared to come. The curtain fell and I glanced back at the palace gate. The Emperor had protected me today only because he needed to stabilize the military power held by Zhongzhou and to suppress the Eastern Palace. Zhong Duan had touched the Emperor's reverse scale. I had presented evidence, and the Emperor had been happy to use it. We had unwittingly become allies. By the time the carriage returned to the Marquis residence, dusk had fallen, the main gate stood wide open and lights blazed inside. As soon as I stepped into the front hall, I heard Lady Wang crying and Ruan Yuqin speaking softly to comfort her. Wan Yuqin looked up and saw me. Her eyes flickered and she stood up to be Lady Wang wiped her tears and turned to me. Her voice sorrowful. Sister, you've returned at last. Did the palace make things difficult for you? You need not worry, madam. His Majesty saw the truth clearly and has cleared my name. I sat in the main seat and turned to Ruan Yuan. Why have you come today, second sister? Ruan Yuan explained that she had heard of the recent troubles in the Marquis residence and had come specially to visit me. How thoughtful of you, I smiled faintly. But as an unmarried young lady, coming to your brother-in-law's residence so often might not sound proper if word gets out. If father knew, he would blame me for not upholding decorum. Wan Yuqin's smile froze. Lady Wang quickly intervened. I invited China with no one to consult within the residence right now. My heart is uneasy. If you are uneasy, madam, you should go to the Buddhist hall to pray for the Marquis, not invite outsiders to discuss family matters. I cut her off. Or do you believe an outsider holds more authority than the token left by the Marquis? Lady Wang's face palled. I stood and informed them that the Emperor had issued an oral decree until the Marquis returned. All affairs in the residence would continue as before. Zhong Duan would leave for the suburban military camp that very day and was forbidden from returning without imperial permission. Lady Wang's head shot up. What? This is the imperial edict. I looked at her. If you have questions, you may enter the palace and ask His Majesty yourself. She opened her mouth but could not speak. I had no patience left for further pretense. Turning around, I ordered Qing Su to escort Wan Yuqin out of the residence. That night, I looked over the account books by Lamplight, suddenly extremely soft footsteps sounded outside the window. I blew out the candle and rested my hand on the short dagger hidden under my pillow. The doorbar was quietly lifted. 12. In the darkness I could see a dark figure slip sideways through the door. He landed soundlessly and moved toward the bed. The moment he reached to lift the bed curtain, I threw off the covers and lunged upward, slashing the dagger toward his throat. The dark figure dodged sideways and grabbed my wrist. I did not pull away with my other hand. I grabbed a porcelain bottle from my pillow and smashed it on the floor. Almost at the same time, Zhao Chen and his men broke through the door. Several long swords were instantly pressed against the dark figure's neck. Candles were lit. I saw his face clearly. He was young with somewhat familiar features. "Who are you?" I said, wrapping a robe around myself. He pressed his lips together and said nothing. Zhao Chen roughly pulled open his collar. On his collarbone there was an old arrow scar. "You are a soldier of the Northern Army," I said, staring at the scar. "Who sent you?" He still remained silent. I took 2 steps closer and suddenly remembered a yellowed portrait in Zhongsu's study. It showed a teenage Zhongsu and another boy who looked nearly identical to him. "You are the Marquis's subordinate," I said. "Certain or a blood relative?" His pupils shrank slightly. I looked at Zhao Chen. Chen understood and pulled open the clothing on his left shoulder. There was a leaf-shaped birthmark on his shoulder. I remembered Zhongsu saying he had a younger brother with a leaf birthmark on his shoulder, but that boy had been abducted at the age of 5 and never found. "What is your name?" My voice softened. His Adam's apple moved. At last he spoke. "Zhong Zmo." I waved for Zhao Chen and his men to withdraw. I then asked him if the Marquis knew he was still alive. Zhong Zmo nodded, but his eyes were complicated. He told me that the man who had abducted him back then was none other than Zhu Jihai, Zhongsu's current deputy general, and it was Zhu Jai who had betrayed them to the enemy this time. I sat down in a chair and motioned for him to explain fully. Zhong Zmo went on to say that Zhu Jai had been a horse bandit in the northern border in his early years after being subdued by the Marquis. He had been promoted all the way, but he had secretly maintained ties with the Rodi barbarians 2 months earlier. The rogue had promised him 3 prefectures in the northern border in exchange for the Marquis's life. Was the drug at the flower viewing banquet also his doing? I asked. Yes, Zhong Xuan administered it. They originally planned to frame the Marquis with a palace maid, angering the Emperor, but things went awry. My heart skipped a beat. The Marquis is still alive. Zhong Zmo clenched his fists. He was alive but trapped and unable to escape. Zhu Jihai had forced him to return to the capital and contact the Eastern Palace to confirm charges of treason against the Marquis. Zhong Zmo looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "But I did not go to the Eastern Palace. I wanted to see you because before my brother left for war he sent me a secret letter." He pulled a letter from his chest. I took it. It was Zhongsu's handwriting with only 1 line. "To my younger brother, if you see Wuhe, you see me." I folded the letter. "Why does Jujai trust you? He does not know I am Zhong Zmo. He thinks I am an orphan named Wuyan, taken by him and raised among the Rongdi." Zhong Zmo twitched his mouth. "It took me 10 years to gain their trust." I looked at his young yet weathered face and my heart suddenly itched for him. "You did not come here only to deliver a letter tonight, did you?" I looked at him. Zhong Zmo then said that Zhu Jihai and the Eastern Palace had made an appointment to rise up in 3 days. I stood and walked to the window. I then instructed Zhong Zmo to leave the city overnight and find General Lu Jan at the suburban military camp. I took a jade ring from the bottom of my dressing case. "Give this to him, he will understand." Zhong Zmo took the jade ring and left with my orders. The next morning the noble consort sent an invitation for Lady Wang and me to attend a plum viewing banquet. I had Zhao Chen send a letter to Ru Yu Qin. There were only 8 words on it. "Tomorrow at the plum banquet, old friends reunite." The plum viewing banquet was held in the plum grove, in the west garden of the Imperial Garden. When I arrived, many noble ladies were already seated. The noble consort sat at the head with Lady Wang beside her, whispering something. When she saw me, the noble consort beckoned me over. She took my hand and asked with concern about my health. "Your Majesty need not worry. This wife is well," I replied with a smile. The noble consort nodded and turned to Lady Wang. "As the elder sister, you must look after her more. With the Marquis away, unrest is unavoidable in the residence." Lady Wang bowed in agreement. After 3 rounds of wine, the palace maids guided everyone to move to the warm chamber. I walked last and glanced at Qing Zhu. She stepped back a few paces and moments later her figure vanished into the plum grove behind a plum tree not far away. A young eunuch nodded slightly at me. The corner of my mouth curved up. I walked slowly toward the warm chamber. Several noble ladies stepped forward to perform. Huan Yuqin was among them. She played *3 variations on the plum blossom *. Her fingers skilled, earning applause from all. The noble consort smiled and rewarded her with a pair of jade bracelets. As Ruined.It thanked her, she suggested picking a red plum branch to cheer the noble consort. This earned her even more praise. I lowered my eyes and drank my tea. An hour later, Ching Su stood silently behind me. Suddenly, a young palace maid hurried in and whispered a few words in the noble consort's ear. The noble consort's expression shifted slightly. She looked at Lady Wang. "Madam, your second household Zhu seems to have quarrelled with someone in the side hall just now. Go and see." Lady Wang rose to take her leave and I followed closely behind. The side hall lay deep in the plum grove, quiet and secluded. As we reached the corridor, faint arguing could be heard from inside. It was Zhong Zuan's voice. "How dare you scheme against me?" The other voice was Zhong Duan. "Uncle, you speak wrongly. It was you who could not restrain yourself." There was also a woman's low sobbing. Lady Wang quickened her pace and abruptly pushed open the hall door. The scene inside froze everyone in place. Zhong Zuan stood by the couch, his clothes dishevelled. Zhong Duan sat on the edge in only his inner garments, and the woman huddled on the couch was none other than Huan Yuqin. Her hair messy, her body bare. The noble ladies who had quietly followed to watch covered their mouths and exclaimed in shock. Moments later, the noble consort arrived, her face dark with anger. Wuqin finally snapped back to her senses. She screamed and clutched the clothes a maid had thrown over her. Tears pouring down. "It's not true, your majesty, this lady was framed, they drugged me." Zhong Duan shot up, his eyes fierce. "What nonsense! You were the one who invited me here, saying you had important matters to discuss." Ruined trembled and pointed at me. "Wu Yuyi, it was you who set this up." All eyes turned to me. I stepped slowly into the hall and bent to pick up a sash from the floor. "You gave me a sash just like this last month." "Second sister," I opened it and poured out the remaining spices. "You said it was calming incense, yet the resident's physician smelled musk in it. And this one, I expect it contains aphrodisiac powder." Wakin's face turned ashen. I looked at Zhong Zuan and Zhong Duan. "You two uncles and nephew must have similar ones on you." "No." Zhong Zuan instinctively felt his sleeve and pulled out an identical sash. Zhong Duan also pulled one out. 3 sachets lay side by side on the ground. The hall fell completely silent. The noble consort took a deep breath, her eyes cold. "Lady Huan, what have you to say for yourself?" Wuqin collapsed to the ground, incoherent. "It wasn't. Someone copied my sash. It was Huan Yui." I chuckled softly and took 2 letters from my sleeve. Presenting them to the noble consort, I explained they had been intercepted by the gate house this morning. They were letters from Yuan Yuqin, arranging meetings with Zhong Duan and Zhong Xuan separately. The handwriting was identical to Ri Chen. Her eyes widened as she shook her head violently. "I didn't write these tusks, sister. Your tastes are rather unique." 2 men at once, I asked softly. "And why wear that gold-plated plum hairpin today? Did second uncle give it to you?" She touched her hair instinctively. The hairpin had belonged to Zhong Zuan's late wife. Zhong Zuan stared fiercely at the pin, then suddenly lunged and grabbed Huan Yuqin by the neck. "You wicked woman, how dare you steal Huan Yang's relics?" Chaos erupted. The noble consort shouted sharply, "Top at once." Guards stepped forward and pulled Zhong Zuan away. Huan Yuqin lay on the ground, her neck red, coughing violently. The noble consort rubbed her temple and ordered the 3 be held separately, pending the emperor's judgment. She looked at the crowd, her expression complicated. "You may all return. I will report today's events truthfully to His Majesty." As I walked out of the side hall, Wakin's shrill scream came from behind. "Wu Yui, you will die a terrible death." I did not slow my pace. 14. By the time I returned to the Marquis residence, it was evening as Ching Su helped me change. Her hands still trembled. "Miss, today was so dangerous. What if the noble consort had investigated closely?" I smiled. It did not matter. The emperor needed an excuse to bring down the Eastern Palace. And Zhong Duan and Zhong Xuan were the Eastern Palace's secret agents in the military. Today's scandal was more than enough for the emperor to remove them with full justification. As for Huan Yuqin, if she dared to harm me again and again, she deserved this day. That night Zyro Chen came to report. Zhong Zmo had met Lu Jan. Troops from the suburban camp were moving in secret. They could control the 4 city gates within 3 days. I tapped my fingers lightly on the table. Looking at the secret letter from the palace on my desk, I knew it was time to close the net. Suddenly, hurried footsteps came from outside the yard. The steward rushed in, panic-stricken. The show in hall was on fire. I shot to my feet. The moment I pushed open the door, I saw flames lighting up half the night sky. From deeper in the darkness, faint clashing of armor echoed. Zyro Chen immediately led his men toward Shun Hall. I stood in the yard, unmoving. I only told Ching Su to fetch the bricade box from the very bottom of my dressing case. Ching Su froze, then understood and turned to run. I called over 2 guards and ordered them to guard the storehouse and the back gate. Anyone suspicious entering or exiting was to be arrested. Resistance meant death. The 2 teams left at once. Only then did I head for show and hall. The fire grew larger and the residents descended into chaos. Lady Wang hurried over, her hair undone. When she saw me, she snapped. "What are you standing around for? If anything happens to the old mistress, rest assured." "Madam," I cut her off. "Guard Zhao is already there." As I spoke, Zhao Chen burst out of the fire carrying the old mistress. She coughed violently, her face blackened by smoke. Lady Wang threw herself over, crying. I looked at Zyro Chen. He shook his head slightly, meaning the fire was not accidental. I ordered the attendants to help the old mistress to the west chamber and send for the resident's physician. I turned to Lady Wang. "Madam, please look after the old mistress. The residence is in chaos. I will check the front." Lady Wang tried to say more, but I had already turned away. After walking a few steps, Ching Su caught up, holding the bride box. I opened it and took out half a tiger tally. I then told Zyro Chen to go to the suburban camp to see Lu Zan and inform him the plan was moved to the 3rd watch. High hour. Zhao Chen's eyes narrowed. "But the residence, I will hold the residence." I tucked the tiger tally into my robes. "Also, after you leave, have Zhong Zimo's men take over the 4 gates. Let no one out." Zyro Chen nodded heavily and vanished into the night. 15. I walked toward the front yard with Ching Su. Passing the storehouse, I saw guards holding the 2nd household steward and Nanny Li, who had been beside Lady Wang. Their arms were bulging. Several gold ingots and scrolls of paintings fell out. I looked at the items and ordered, "Bind them and lock them in the firewood room." I had just turned when the steward rushed over. Panicked. Many soldiers had come and surrounded the residence. I stepped onto the front steps. Through the gate crack, I saw a dark mass of soldiers outside. Leading them was Wang Keng, brother-in-law of Juji Hai. "Open the gate," I said. The steward hesitated, then opened it. I stood just inside the threshold, looking at Wang Cheng. He sat on his horse, looking down. "By order of the Crown Prince, the Zenyuan Marquis residence is suspected of colluding with the enemy. No one may enter or leave pending investigation." I smiled. "Crown Prince's order. Do you have an imperial edict?" Wang Cheng's face darkened. "The Crown Prince governs the state. His order is as the Emperor's." I stepped forward. "Then tell me, when did His Majesty issue the edict for the Crown Prince to govern?" "I have heard nothing of it." He was left speechless. Chief Secretary Son of the Crown Prince's palace rode forward. "There was trouble in the palace today. Zhong Duan and Zhong Zuan both testified I had framed loyal officials and colluded with foreign enemies." "Chief Secretary Son," I said slowly, "you accused me of colluding with the enemy. Where is your proof?" Son sneered. "We will find proof once we arrest you and search the residence." He waved his hand and soldiers moved forward. I pulled the half-tiger tally from my robes and held it high. All the soldiers froze. "This is the military tiger tally of genuine Marquis." I said clearly, to see this tally is to see the Marquis himself. "Anyone who dares step through this gate today is a traitor against his lord, to be executed immediately by military law." The air turned to ice. Wang Cheng stared at the tally, his hand on his sword hilt. Chief Secretary Son shouted anxiously, "Do not listen to her lies. The tally must be fake. The Marquis is missing. How could she have it? The Marquis entrusted it to me with his own hands before the expedition. Wang Cheng, you served under him for 3 years. You should know if this tally is real or fake." Wang Cheng's forehead sweated. He knew it well. Time ticked by. The night watch drum sounded. It was the 3rd watch, high hour. At that moment, horse hooves thundered from the end of the street. In the firelight, a unit of black-armored cavalry galloped over. The leader held a torch high, illuminating a great banner with the character Liu. Chief Secretary Son's face drained of color. Wang Cheng wheeled his horse around and ordered a retreat, but it was too late. The black cavalry crashed through his formation in an instant. General Lu Jian charged at the front, his spear sending 2 resisting colonels flying. He stopped right before the residence gate. He dismounted and bowed to me. "This general is late." "Madam, you have been alarmed." I put away the tiger tally and nodded slightly. I asked how the city stood. Lu Jian glanced at the surrounded soldiers. The Eastern Palace was under control and Ju Jai was on the run. I turned and walked back into the residence. No sooner had I stepped through the gate than Ching Su caught up to report that Nanny Li, locked in the woodshed, had bitten her tongue and could no longer speak. The steward from the second household had also suddenly gone into convulsions, as if poisoned. I paused in my steps. They were silenced awfully fast. Keep a close eye on them. Don't let anything else happen. I walked toward the west chamber. How is the old mistress? The physician says she was badly frightened but not in serious danger. As I reached the west chamber, I heard Lady Wang's crying from inside and the old mistress's weak voice. It must have been her. Set the fire to burn me alive. I pushed the door open. The crying stopped abruptly. The old mistress leaned against the head of the bed. When she saw me, her eyes were filled with venom. Lady Wang stood up, her finger pointing at me, trembling. You dare to come here? I walked to the bed and stared at the old mistress. I told her the fire had started in the small Buddhist hall inside Shoin Hall. The sandalwood incense offered there had been replaced with gunpowder cause. A single spark could set it off. The old mistress's pupils shrank. You chant scriptures at Shua every day. Without fail, I went on. If Gar Zyro hadn't arrived in time tonight, you would have been burned alive by now, Lady Wang shrilled. What are you saying? Do you think we set the fire ourselves? Of course not, I looked at her. But whoever did knew the old mistress's habits and knew the residence would be in chaos tonight. The perfect opportunity. The old mistress grabbed me abruptly. You found out. Who is it? Nanny Li and the second household steward confessed. I lied without changing my expression. The one who ordered them was surnamed Ju. The old mistress's face turned deathly pale at once. Her lips trembled but no sound came out. Lady Wang also froze. Ju Jihai. They knew the name all too. Well, the niece from the old mistress's family had married Ju Jai as his second wife. Over the years, the Ju family had taken countless benefits from the Marquis residence. I leaned down and whispered in the old mistress's ear. Ju Jai defected to the Rogi and plotted against the Marquis. This fire tonight was his gift to the Eastern Palace. Burned the residence, cut off the Marquis's retreat, and naturally your second son and dear grandson were part of it too. The old mistress trembled all over and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Lady Wang screamed and threw herself over her. I stood up straight, looked at the chaotic scene, then turned and walked out of the room. Outside the door, Ching Su's face was white. Miss, you just gave her a warning. I wiped the blood splatter off the back of my hand so she stops thinking I'm the one hurting her. When I returned to my courtyard, it was already midnight. Zyro Chen had not returned. Suddenly, footsteps sounded outside the window. I blew out the candle and rested my hand on the short dagger. The door was pushed open a crack. A dark figure slipped in. By moonlight, I saw his face clearly and then I froze completely. It was Jong-Su. His face bore wounds and he looked utterly worn out. He looked at me, his voice so hoarse it was barely audible. Yu Yi, I'm back. Before the words were out, his body swayed and he fell straight forward. 17. The instant Jong-Su collapsed, I caught him. He was burning hot to the touch. His body was covered in injuries, trembling. I told Ching-Zu to bring hot water and healing ointment. I cut open his clothes. The wound on his shoulder had festered, the flesh around it blackened. I gripped the scissors steady and began cutting away the rotten flesh. He groaned, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead, but did not wake. Ching Su entered with the water and her hands shook at the sight. Lock the door, I said, don't open it for anyone. Ching Su obeyed and locked it. I continued my work. By the time I finished dressing his wounds, the sky was faintly bright. I sat by the bed and watched over him. In just over 2 months he had lost so much weight. A new scar stretched from his brow bone to his temple, but he was alive. That was enough. At Chenao, Zyro Chen returned. When he saw Jong-Su on the bed, his eyes re-ened at once. Marquis, I asked Jairochen how things stood in the palace. He wiped his face and reported that all the Crown Prince's secret agents inside the palace had been rooted out. The Emperor, who had been unconscious for 2 days, had woken up and issued an edict deposing the Crown Prince. My fingers stilled. I looked out the window. The Emperor had become the greatest winner. Zyro Chen hesitated. There's one more thing. Wan Yu Qin has gone mad in prison. I snorted coldly. She deserved such an end. The next day Jong-Su woke up. How are you? His voice was rough. I should be asking you that. I held his hand. What happened in the northern border? He spoke briefly. Ju Jihai had leaked their marching route. After falling into the ambush, he had broken out with his personal guards and hidden in the mountains. Later, Zhong Zmo had found him and they had turned the situation to their advantage. Jong-Su squeezed my hand tightly. These months you've suffered. I shook my head and told him that Jujai had been captured at Tenli Slope outside the city, but had taken poison and killed himself. Zhong-Su's eyes darkened. The crown prince is deposed. Zhong Duan and Zhong Xuan have been sentenced to exile. Lady Wang eyes paused. His Majesty, remembering old General Wang's past merits, only stripped her of her noble title and sent her to the family temple. And the old mistress, after the shock of the fire, she suffered a stroke. Zhao Chen found out the fire was set by the nanny beside her, who had taken money from the Zhu family. Zhong-Su fell silent for a long while. At last he said, "Good peace at last." 3 days later, the imperial edict arrived for quelling the rebellion. Zhong-Su was promoted to Duke of Janga. I was granted the title of first-class madam. There was also a secret edict. The emperor ordered Zhong-Su to take over the Ministry of War and reorganize the northern border defenses. After the eunuch delivering the edict left, Zhong-Su looked at me. His Majesty means to keep me in the capital. The birds are gone, so the bow is put away. I caressed my belly. The northern border is pacified, the eastern palace threat removed, and the other princes are still young. Naturally, His Majesty wants to take back military power. Do you blame me? He asked. If it weren't for me, you would never have been drawn into all this. I smiled. I chose this path myself. That night in the side courtyard, I chose to stay. On the day of the palace banquet, I chose to confess, and now I chose to stand by his side. Time passed quickly. A few months later, I gave birth to a boy named Hung on Zhong Hong's full-month celebration. The residents held a grand feast. After the guests had left, Zhong-Su held the child and watched the moon. In the yard, I walked over and leaned on his shoulder. He held my hand. "Yui, there are some words I must say now under the moonlight." His eyes were bright. "I fought my way back from the northern border, not just for military affairs, but for you." His voice was low. "The night you chose to stay in the side courtyard, I knew I could never escape you in this life." My heart skipped a beat. "The day you admitted you were pregnant at the palace banquet, I actually," he paused, "felt relieved because I could finally marry you. Openly love you, protect you." "Zhong-Su, let me finish," he interrupted. "I know how much wrongs you've suffered marrying me. Lady Wang's bullying, the old mistress's hostility, court gossip. You never complained once." His finger gently brushed my cheek, but it hurt me. "Every time I saw you forcing yourself to be strong, it hurt. So I've made up my mind, let's leave." I stared at him blankly. "To the Jiangnan region." He smiled. "I have a garden in Suzhou by the water full of osman, thus flowers. Hunger can grow up there without learning power struggles. Without bearing the burden of the Marquis residence, leave the residence to ZMO," he went on. "That boy has the ability to hold it up. As for the court, I'll resign from the Ministry of War, keeping only an empty title." "Can you bear to leave it all?" he nodded. 20 years of swords and shadows, I'm tired. From now on, I only want to stay with you and Hanger. Living a quiet life, I leaned into his arms, sweet and happy. On the 8th day of the 10th month, the sky was clear and bright. 3 horse-drawn carriages left the capital heading south. The Jiangnan garden was indeed by the water, white walls, black tiles. The autumn osman thus bloomed, filling the whole home with fragrance. In spring I planted a plum tree in the yard. Zhong-Zu hugged me from behind, his chin resting on the top of my head. "In our next life, let me meet you earlier." I turned around, looked at the fine lines at the corners of his eyes and smiled brightly. "We haven't finished this life yet." The sunset smoke curled from kitchen chimneys. On the distant river, a boatwoman sang a Jiangnan folk song. Drifting over on the wind, life is like a dream. How much joy can there be in a life? We'll find out together. If you like the story, don't forget to like it, share it and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.